நகரத்துக்கு அகில இந்திய 11வது மாநாடு நடத்த அனுமதி அளித்த தலைமைக்கு முதலில் நன்றியை தெரிவித்துக் கொண்டு இந்த அகில இந்திய மாநாடை ஒட்டி கருத்தரங்கங்கள் நடத்த வேண்டும் என்ற அடிப்படையிலும் ஏற்கனவே தமிழ்நாடு முழுவதும் பிரச்சார பயணம் மேற்கொள்ள வேண்டும் என்ற எடுத்த முடிவின் அடிப்படையில் 4 நாட்கள் 4000 கிலோமீட்டர் 4 முனையிலிருந்து அந்த பிரச்சாரம் நடத்தி முடித்து நாளை மாநாடு துவங்குவதற்கு முன்னால் இந்த கருத்தரங்கம் என்று ஏற்பாடு செய்யப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. இதற்கு வருகை புரிந்துள்ள அனைத்து தோழர்களையும் வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்பதோடு இந்த கருத்தரங்கத்துக்கு சிறப்பு விருந்தினர்களாக வந்திருக்கக்கூடிய தோழர்களுக்கு வரவேற்பு நல்கும் விதமாக இந்திய விவசாயிகள் இன்றைக்கு உலகம் முழுவதுக்குமான ஒரு எடுத்துக்காட்டாக ஓராண்டுக்கு மேலாக விவசாயிகளுடைய போராட்டம் என்பதை வழிநடத்திய தலைவர்களின் முக்கியமான தலைவர். இது ஏற்கனவே அவர்களுக்கான அனுபவத்தை உருவாக்கி கொடுத்த நாசிக் முதல் மும்பை வரை லாங் மார்ச் என்பதை நடத்தி அதன் மூலம் விவசாய பெருங்குடி மக்களுக்கான நம்பிக்கையை விதைத்த அன்பு தலைவர் தோழர் அசோக் தாவலே அவர்கள் இன்றைக்கு இந்துத்துவம் இந்துத்துவ வெறி மக்களை பிளவுபடுத்துகின்ற இந்த விஷயங்கள் மதச்சார்பின்மைக்கும் இந்திய குடியரசுக்கும் வந்திருக்கின்ற ஆபத்துக்களை எல்லாம் விலக்கி பேச வந்திருக்கிறார். அவரை உங்கள் சார்பாக வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்பை நல்குகின்றோம். இன்றைக்கு இந்த மதவாத சூழலும் மக்களை பிரித்தாளுகின்ற இந்த நேரத்தில் அறிவியல் மனப்பான்மை என்பது மிக அதிகப்படியாக மக்களிடம் கொண்டு செல்ல வேண்டிய அவசியம் இருக்கிறது. அதே போன்று இன்றைக்கு சுற்றுப்புற சூழல் என்பது மிக முதலாளித்துவ ஏகாதிபத்திய நாடுகளால் கலைபுரம் செய்யப்படுகிறது. இதை பற்றியெல்லாம் நமக்கு அறிந்து கொள்வதற்கான விஷயமாக சொல்வதற்காக வந்திருக்கக்கூடிய சிறப்பு விருந்தினர் தோழர் தேஜல் கணித்கர் அவர்களையும் வருக வருக என்று உங்கள் சார்பாக வரவேற்கின்றோம். இன்றைக்கு நிதித்துறை வங்கிகள் அதனை ஒட்டுமொத்தமாக சீரழிக்கக்கூடிய நடவடிக்கைகளை கடந்த 9 ஆண்டுகளாக நாம் நிதித்துறை சார்ந்த அனுபவித்து வந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். இது மக்கள் மத்தியிலும் பிரச்சாரம் செய்து வந்திருக்கின்றோம். இப்படிப்பட்ட ஆபத்துக்கள் எப்படியெல்லாம் இன்றைக்கு இந்த நிதி மேலாண்மையில் இன்றைக்கு நிதி மூலதனம் எவ்வாறெல்லாம் இந்த மக்களை வாட்டி வதைக்கின்றது என்ற அடிப்படையில் இங்கே பேசுவதற்காக வந்திருக்கின்ற சிறப்பு விருந்தினர் தோழர் சாமிநாதன் அவர்களையும் வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்கின்றோம். அதே போன்று இந்திய வங்கி ஊழியர் சம்மேளனத்துடைய அகில இந்திய தலைவர் தோழர் CJ நந்தகுமார் அவர்களை வரவேற்கின்றோம். அதே போன்று நம்முடைய இந்திய வங்கி ஊழியர் சம்மேளனத்துடைய அகில இந்திய பொதுச் செயலாளர் தோழர் தபாஷிஷ் அவர்களையும் வரவேற்கின்றோம். நம்முடைய அகில இந்திய சம்மேளனத்துடைய மூத்த தலைவர்கள் பலரும் இங்கே வந்திருக்கிறார்கள். அதே போன்று நம்முடைய சகோதர தொழிற்சங்கங்களுடைய பல்வேறு முன்னணி தலைவர்களும் தோழர்களும் இங்கே வந்திருக்கின்றார்கள். இதை இந்திய வங்கி ஊழியர் சம்மேளனம் தமிழ்நாடு சார்பாகவும் அகில இந்திய தலைமை சார்பாகவும் வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்பதில் பெருமகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறோம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
Now we'll proceed with the lecture by Dr. Tejal Kanitkar on scientific temper and combating climate change. I request Dr. Tejal Kanitkar to give our lecture on scientific temper and contemporary climate change.
Thank you very much to the Bank Employees Federation of India for the invitation. I am very humbled. by the invite, and I am with very seasoned speakers and intellectuals on the dais, so I am a little scared, I must admit. To all the comrades here, thank you very much for this opportunity, and it's a privilege to be here. I've been given a difficult topic, and I typically speak on both of these things to my students in a classroom. And I have a blackboard, and I have slides and presentations, so it is easy for me. I am not accustomed to speaking without a blackboard. So you'll have to excuse me if I miss something or make some mistakes. It's a difficult topic, but I think, and it's also, what do I say on scientific temper in this land of rationality? Here it's a state that has given us so many lessons in rationality, as so many thinkers who have spoken and written about it. But what I'm going to try and do is connect some of the ideas of scientific temper. I think we live in times where perhaps we need to emphasize and re-emphasize these ideas many times over. But I'm going to try and connect these ideas to what we are facing now as one of perhaps the most urgent and large challenges in front of the world, not just in front of us in India, which is climate change. It is not an easy task, but I'm going to try and attempt to do this. But let me begin by speaking a little bit about the idea of scientific temper itself. And that, I think, there is a very, Society for the Promotion of Scientific Temper, there were many scientists who were associated with this, and Professor Pushpa Bhargav had actually, given a very, I think it's a very powerful definition of the term, that, what do we mean by scientific temper? It's the understanding that science is not, knowledge is not obtained through revelation. Knowledge is the product of human endeavor. So it is our effort, our actions, our practice that leads to the generation of knowledge. You don't sit under a tree and gain knowledge, right? You don't, it's not obtained without doing work. And so therefore, the process of science and the knowledge that is generated through this process, in fact, belongs to the people. Whether or not it is, people currently have ownership of it is a different question. They don't. And they perhaps under, the current system of economic and political, the current political and economic system, it becomes very obvious that science and technology and the ownership of science and technology get controlled in a few hands, and those to whom it really belongs, which is to the people, do not get the benefits of these. But I think it's a very simple, straightforward definition, but a very important and profound one in the same way. Right? But what it also means is, therefore, science is not one more authority. Earlier we had the authority of the temple or the church or the mosque or some other religious authority, and now we are simply replacing that authority with the authority of science. That is not how we must think about it. Science is not simply another authority. It is not simply a set of pronouncements. It is not simply a set of outcomes. It is a process. It is socially produced. Science is produced socially. It's produced by society. And so it's a process. It's a way in which we think. It's a way in which we try to understand the natural, physical, and social world around us. So, if you look, so at its the very spirit of it, therefore, is skepticism, and that is inherently anti-authoritarian. So anti-authoritarian skepticism is at the very basic, essence of scientific temper. So you don't simply say, okay, what earlier you would have, heard some Baba is saying something or some priest is saying something, and that is why it is true. So some scientist is saying something and therefore it is true. This should not happen. What scientific temper and the process of science should teach us is to be able to question the world that we see around us. Why is it not, and it should not also be restricted I mean, you know, I know that I'm talking to bank employees here, but this is, you know, it becomes much more important perhaps to even talk to scientists. For many of whom that scientific method gets limited to the laboratory, gets limited to their offices, to their institutions, but doesn't come out of those institutions. It doesn't lead you to look at the society around you and ask, why is it that we live in a society that is so starkly unequal? Right? And so this is what I think is the essence and most important aspect of science. Right? So the idea of science as another authority is in fact unscientific, and it furthers certain interests, certain class interests. It disempowers science, in fact, from the tremendous emancipatory potential that science actually has. Because it is, in fact, the process of social transformation that science can enable. Science enables a process of social transformation, and that is the real power of science and the scientific method, which you take away from it if you start thinking of it as another authority. And so it becomes important to think about why is it that we rely on a process of truth-seeking that tries to find evidence, tries to find explanations, causal connections. You don't take something as given simply because you believe in something. Right? You need to be able to have evidence to be able to accept something as truth. And, you know, what is inherently, therefore, part of this process, because we might find something that we today think is correct, and some years later there will be another discovery that proves it wrong, and we have to update our knowledge of the physical and the natural world. And therefore uncertainty, the concept of uncertainty, is inherent to science. And we all dealt with that during the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? It is a relatively, of course, coronaviruses are not new, but relatively new virus, new problem, and we didn't know what was happening. We were learning, doctors were learning, epidemiologists were learning, everybody was learning. But we live in a world where you have headline crazy media, you have an ever-knowing social media, and all of them want answers now. They want answers today, and they are unforgiving. So you cannot make a mistake. But you cannot do science if you're afraid of making mistakes. Right? And so the entire process of trying to know a new phenomena is always challenging. And that is exactly what also applies to the problem of climate change. It's not as if environmental pollution is a new problem, or environmental degradation is a new problem. Engels spoke about it a long time ago, for example. Right? The relationship between man and nature is something that has been explored many times over. But how we regulate the environment, how we deal with environmental pollution, and more recently the problem of climate change are relatively new problems. And so our knowledge of these problems is uncertain. We don't know. There are some things we know, there are some things we don't know, and there are some things we don't know that we don't know. Right? So there are multiple levels of knowledge and lack of knowledge across the board. And so we have to deal with this. But we don't live in a society which is very comfortable with this uncertainty. Right? We all hate the weather people who don't tell us with accuracy whether or not it is going to rain tomorrow. Right? Whether or not it's going to be, there is going to be cloud cover or not. Right? Every time, I mean, the IMD, perhaps the oldest institution in the country, is perhaps the most derided institution also in the country. They do quite a lot of good work. There are some inherent uncertainties, of course, and it is very difficult to communicate the concept of probability to the general audience. We all learn it. You're all bank employees here, so you're much better at maths than the average citizen, perhaps, right? So everybody has learned probability in school, but applying the concept of probability to understanding the world around us, or to something like weather prediction, etc. It might rain 70% chance that it would rain. But that means there's a 30% chance that it's not going to rain. right? So, but how do you deal with this? It becomes an issue.